Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our panel, Financial Mobility and Inclusion in Asia, the Lightnet-Interstellar Partnership Panel. My name is Ben Jessel, and I am a contributor to Forbes.com and also a partner in IBM's payment practice here in New York. So the theme for Meridian 2020 is Global Connections to Solve Real-World Challenges. Today has been dedicated towards exploring that theme through the lens of innovation and understanding why innovation can solve some of our most pressing shared problems today. So today we're going to explore an interesting partnership between Lightnet and Interstellar, which is in the Southeast Asia corridor, which is a really interesting project that sets out to offer low cost and instantaneous financial inclusivity and mobility for billions in Asia Pacific. This is supported by a strategic partnership with Interstellar, who are taking on the global remittance market and leveraging the power of Interstellar. And using Stellar's fast and scalable sustainable blockchain technology, they're going to achieve this. So today we have Mike Kennedy, CEO of Interstellar, and Beam Arunanondchai, Vice Chairman and Group CEO of Lightnet Group. So first of all, let's just reintroduce both companies and both individuals here. We'll start with Mike. So Mike, just give us a brief background about yourself and also about Interstellar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Ben, and thank you, Stellar, for inviting us to speak at Meridian. Very excited about it. So quick background, I came out to the Bay Area to do my undergrad in engineering at Stanford, and I'm going out to the East Coast to do MBA at Harvard. And then came back, worked in consulting at McKinsey, and then had a number of senior payments roles, led payments for Wells Fargo, and then also was president of OFX, which is an international payments company. Probably one of the most relevant things is I was the founder and CEO of Zelle, which is the largest person-to-person payments network in the United States. Interstellar is a company that's looking to revolutionize payments across the world. Most notably, or initially, we're focused on cross-border payments. We feel that we have the payments expertise. We also have the technology understanding, and we believe in the blockchain. We believe specifically in the Stellar blockchain as the way to revolutionize financial services. And so we work with companies similar to Lightnet, Velo Labs, and others to help to achieve this vision of using the blockchain, using the Stellar blockchain to revolutionize financial services, starting with international payments to make those faster, cheaper, and more efficient.
Okay, Beam here. Thank you so much, Stella, for inviting me to speak at Meridian to talk about Lightnet and collaboration with Interstellar. So a bit of my background, Stanford Engineering, Stanford MBA, spent more than 10 years in investment banking and private equity, mainly investing in the financial service space. After that, I became a serial entrepreneur, have founded multiple companies, including Money Table, which is a payroll on demand in Thailand. Also a venture partner at Kechora Venture, one of the leading venture capital fund in Southeast Asia. And now I'm the co-founder and also the group CEO of Lightnet. So Lightnet is the next generation financial network. We are basically, so if Stella is a Swiss, what we want to build here is similar to the Visa network that connect all kind of financial network together, where we act as a bridge. So Lightnet is backed by all the leading conglomerate in Asia. We are backed by CB Group, which is one of the largest conglomerate in Thailand, and also the owner of 7-Eleven in Thailand and in other Southeast Asia countries. We are also backed by Seven Bank, which is a group that owns 7-Eleven in Japan. Also Uni-President, which owns 7-Eleven in Taiwan, Philippines, and China, as well as other leading financial conglomerate like Hanwha from Korea, UOB Bank from Singapore. And the original idea is how do we, because Stellar is a great open financial network, and how do we kind of like using Stellar blockchain connecting to our credit layer. And then we also have another blockchain protocol that we developed with Interstellar called Velo, which act as a bridge asset. With that credit layer, with the Stellar network, we want to connect to different 7-Eleven, because in Southeast Asia, most of people transact using cash-in cash-out network. So our original idea is connecting from Stellar network to our network to basically different cash in, cash out across Southeast Asia to cover the unbanked and underbanked. From there, we also able to connect to digital bank, connect to credit card rail, and connect to different rail. So our goal is really three things. It's really financial inclusion, which is able to cover anyone through different financial settlement and financial touch point. Two is able to make our network like a bridge to allow for any kind of interoperability across all kind of platform. Because in Southeast Asia, people, they are using cryptocurrency now to transact, as well as the underbank, who just use cash at 7-Eleven. And then lastly, we're working with Interstellar to hoping that we can create kind of like a digital fiat network, because where we can make the cost the most competitive. Because if you do a digital fiat transaction, there actually no real cash transact between the digital network, and that allow you to give the most competitive exchange rate. And that would allow to also cut a lot of middlemen, because bank can talk directly to 7-Eleven without the need to go to Swift or go to a multiple middleman to settle. So in short, Lightnet is hoping that working with Interstellar to utilize the Stellar network, we could bring financial inclusion to the Asia, especially Southeast Asia market, as well as able to allow for interoperability to create the best financial mobility for the Asia Pacific.
Thanks, Bean. That really helps. And I think really what, through my research, when I first wrote an article about this some time ago, what really amazed me was just the scale and extent of your operations. I mean, Seven Bank has 69,000 convenience stores globally that they run. The amount of contact points that are in this network is very large. And it seems to be a market that's ripe for this kind of disruption, given that over 70% of transactions in this part of the world tend to be kind of cash oriented. So I find that very interesting. And it seems to be well positioned in terms of both having that network and then having that technology that can then facilitate those transactions. So Mike, just kind of turning to you for a second, can you tell us a little bit more about why you created this partnership, the why around this?
Yeah, no, exactly. So as I said, we're focused on improving financial services and cross-border payments. One of the things that we learned when we created Zelle was that for a payments network, you need scale. You also need to be solving a real world problem. And so we looked and we said, is there a problem with cross-border payments? And the answer is obviously yes. They're slow, they're inefficient, et cetera. Are there better ways to do it? We think absolutely. The second way is that you need scale. Anytime you have a network business, if you have one person that has a telephone, it's not very helpful. If you have two people, it's somewhat helpful. You can only talk to each other. But once you get everyone to have telephones, it's great. So same thing with sending and receiving money. You need to be able to have senders and receivers. And so one of the things that we felt was amazing about this partnership was that Beam and the rest of the team have these great relationships with large institutions, the CP Group, Hanwha, UOB, as you mentioned, Seven Bank. Overall, I think there's over 40,000 7-Elevens owned and operated by these institutions collectively that are part of this collective. You have agents at 5 million different agents. So doing this and being able to help with the product, with the technology, with the implementations of this into this vast network will really get both sides of the transaction going, which really is that flywheel going. It helps us to build it considerably. And with that speed and with that growth, you'll be able to have these faster, more efficient, lower cost transactions, which will deliver the value to the businesses, it'll deliver the value to the end users, and it will allow people to send money home, for example, migrant workers, be able to send money home with only having a very small fraction of it taken away in fees, as opposed to today where a large percentage is. And you want to make sure that those people that are working hard get the money back home where it should go and not have it taken by a bunch of middlemen.
That makes sense. There seems to be a lot of parallels with the work they did in Zelle in terms of, you've got these kind of banks and financial institutions, and then you have the kind of customers that kind of next kind of level down. So you're pulling those customers through that network that's created. Is that right? Is that kind of?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly right. It's very hard and very admirable when people can create a business where they're bringing one end consumer at a time, starting from none. It's a lot. I've found it, and we found with Zelle, it's a lot easier to say, oh, here's a partner. We can integrate with this partner once. They can expose it through all their channels, and they happen to have 10 million customers. Here's another one with 5 million customers. Here's one with 15 million customers. And you can get up to speed very quickly. with Zelle, we've gotten up to over 1 billion transactions a year, doing over $100 billion of transactions. And we did that by, as you said, we're a business, we connect to these banks, these money transmitters, et cetera, who then have existing customer bases they can expose this to. And we're all doing this on the Stellar network, which is fantastic for, I would assume everyone or most of the people on this call today, looking to grow the Stellar network. And this is the way that we feel is the best way to do that.
That's great, Mike. Appreciate it. Beam, turning to you, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this consortium, about Lightnet itself, what the various organizations are, how they came together. What was the process that you went through to get everyone in a room, to get them oriented around that value proposition, and then forming that idea and then kind of moving forward with it? I'd just love to hear that origin story.
Well, I think a number of our backers, right, have either owned a bank or have invested in financial service. So all the top conglomerate are our sponsor in Asia Pacific aware that currently there's a middleman problem in the remittance space, right? For example, they want to transact from Singapore to Thailand, even though it's only 2 hours by plane, it's actually going through at least 5 banks, right? Like you have middleman bank, you have beneficiary bank, intermediary bank. And that make remittance become very expensive. For immigrant worker, they're paying up to 10% just to move money from one country to another, right? So basically, because of the middleman problem, because of how blockchain could really cut down these middlemen, and because at that time we already started working with Interstellar, this brings the credibility. So for people like Hanwha UOB, right, they found that this partnership that we are backed by CP Group with Interstellar is very unique because it's presenting the best of both worlds, where Interstellar representing the best technology, the right kind of platform, the right kind of open financial platform to disrupt what is currently happening in Asia Pacific. And we have CP Group, which have a great credibility in financial service. Most people don't know that CP Group is one of the largest shareholder Ping An, which is also the largest insurance and also the major player in financial service in China. So CP Group have not only 7-Eleven, not only many retail stores, but also a long credibility of doing financial services. So with the trust, with involved the business and the technology, so initial people that are coming, right, 7-Eleven Japan, and also Union President, which is 7-Eleven Taiwan, Philippines, China, because they're aware that, look, 7-Eleven, there are 3 million Southeast Asia workers in Japan. They're sending money to South Asia. So if CP Group can cover the receive side in Southeast Asia with the 7-Eleven, and then 7-Eleven Japan could cover the send side from Japan, Hanwha could cover the send side from Korea, because in Korea, there are also around 2 million Southeast Asia workers. And then they're also a big, and also Union President, right, with that position in Philippines, it's a large receiver market, right, from Middle East, from different send. So when they look at this partnership, it's like, oh, this is a very unique partnership where you can build basically both send and receive remittance network using Stellar network, using Interstellar help to really build instantaneous transfer without the need to go through SWIFT. So once people agree on this value proposition, and when you start getting all this name, other people follow. And what we done that time is we making sure that we're able to cover the whole Asia Pacific, which means we have the big partner like UOB Bank in Singapore, because Singapore is also a large send to South Asia. We have 7 banks covering Japan, Hanwha covering Korea. So we have all these major send to the Southeast Asia country. We also have basically Union President, which represent Taiwan, China, and also Philippines, right? And then also we also have other investors that are representing different parts to complete the dot in the Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific ecosystem. So that's how it gets started. And I think right now it's very exciting because we already now doing the POC with Hanwha, and we already have a live transaction with a number of our partners. We also because of this consortium, we're also able to bring in many more interesting partners. So I think trust is everything. And I think once you have the trust, once you have the pilot, then things start rolling.
No, I've been very impressed. I mean, as you know, blockchain is all about the adoption, which is all about getting a group of organizations together, but then having them all aligned around a shared goal. And that's where many of these blockchain projects have failed, because by the time they get 30 or 40 organizations in a room, they have subtly different needs and wants, which means it becomes very difficult. But I see this as kind of very different, that you've managed to align across this goal that you all have. And Beam, can you talk a little bit more about the goals that you're trying to achieve? Clearly it's about helping the unbanked, it's about lowering the cost of remittance, getting rid of the shadow banking system, things of that kind of nature. But I'd love to hear it in your own words.
Okay, so I think Southeast Asia, right, is have nearly 700 million population. 70% of them are unbanked or underbanked. Southeast Asia remittance market is really big, right? And also fundamentally, if you want to compare right now, it's similar to like if people ask why Alibaba, why a number of e-commerce are so successful in China, because when they start back then, there really no e-commerce, there really no commerce infrastructure. So people using e-commerce as a main commerce infrastructure. Southeast Asia is like that for the banking sector. If you compare the banking sector in Southeast Asia to US, we probably have less than 10 times to 20 times the banking branch coverage compared between Southeast Asia to the US. We also have a very extremely low financial inclusion, where cost of doing financial is really expensive. However, even though we are very low financial inclusion, we have close to 100% mobile phone penetration in South Asia. And a lot of countries in South Asia, like Philippines, Indonesia, they're island, which means banking sector, it's really hard for banking sector to cover them. Now, even though it's very fragmented, it's a market where all Southeast Asia countries are interconnected. And what's very interesting is if you look at Singapore, right? They now is a country where more than 30% are immigrant worker and expat. And other Southeast Asia countries try to follow. So if you're saying that after COVID, there's a migration pattern for international people to move to Southeast Asia because it's the next stage for growth. Imagine become a region of 1 billion people where 30% are expat immigrant worker. So including underbanked, including expat, including immigrant worker, you can imagine that it will be one of the world's largest remittance space with no infrastructure. So our vision here is, how do we able to create a universal credit settlement to really serve all kind of people in Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific and beyond? Because different places are transacting differently, right? I mean, a lot of people are using cash and cash out network. Some are using bank. Some now are using cryptocurrency to transact. And also, right, if you rely on SWIFT, everything has to route back to US, come back to Asia with a different time zone, very expensive, take 3-4 days to settle. So the vision of Lightnet in working with Interstellar, how we become like a Visa card network that is a universal credit. But instead of just transact with merchant and issuing card, we can basically accept any kind of money form. We can then allow people who connect to our network, any anchor, to be able to settle in any form. It's actually quite amazing now, right? That even though like Thailand and China, we're in the same region. And this is a true story, right? So I have my Visa credit card. I actually have a China renminbi. I'm going to take a train from Shanghai to Hangzhou. At the train ticket station, they don't accept renminbi. They only accept two things: Union Pay, which is the China equivalent to Visa card, and they accept Alipay. Even I have China renminbi or a universal Visa card, I cannot buy the train ticket. And that is our vision. How do we able for anyone in Southeast Asia to Asia Pacific and basically beyond to allow their net worth to travel in any financial network and settle, right? To allow for any immigrant worker who just got cash out their payday to send money instantaneously to their relative who waiting to pay for their mortgage in real time with the least cost possible. And hopefully one day we can say that, look, Lightnet and Interstellar allowing financial transaction, allowing payment to be transacted as easy as sending a WeChat message to a friend. And that is our goal, right? So it's a long journey, but we do really want to help people, because for us it's really two things, right? Financial inclusion, which means it's a financial network for anyone, right? Financial mobility, which means we remove the boundary, we remove the financial form. So actually the other day people asked me, right? Oh, do you want to go beyond remittance to like other kind of payment? And I told them that my vision is, how do we remove the word remittance and just have payment? So if you imagine that you can use the network that Stellar have, and it becomes the point where you're sending money to Myanmar, to China, it's the same experience, same speed, same cost as me sending money to my wife. Then it's no remittance anymore. It's just payment experience. Payment. So that's the goal.
Oh, thanks, Beam. I appreciate it. It's a very compelling vision. And Mike, just kind of turning more to the kind of the Stellar lens of things. How is the technology making this happen? What's the kind of the magic and the secret sauce here?
No, it's a great question. And I think that a lot of people on the call are very familiar with Stellar and how it works. But one of the key things to Stellar is that it can be faster. It can be basically an instantaneous transaction. So we'll be able to, Velo, which is one of the partners that's working with us on this, along with Lightnet, is issued on the Stellar network right now. As you know, you can have different tokens on Stellar. And so we can instantly, move these tokens, whether it's the Velo tokens or whether it's some of these digital credits that Beam was referring to, across the DEX or across the Stellar network instantaneously. Today, in order to move money from, say, South Korea to Thailand, it could take 3-4 days to get from one to the other. It's also going to have to go through SWIFT, as well as I think Beam just said 4 or 5 correspondent banks. We're going to remove all of that. It can now say we're going to have an anchor in South Korea, and there's an anchor in Thailand, and it instantaneously goes from one to the other. And then we can use domestic payment systems that are in most places outside the US are actually in real time to get it into the recipient's account. So you can move it from the partner that we have in the sending country to that anchor that has the token that's on the Stellar blockchain. We can instantaneously transact it to the token that's on the other anchor's blockchain, and then put that into fiat and get it out into the recipient's hands. The nice thing is I think that early on in blockchain, particularly when it comes to remittance, there was a lot of talk about pumping up why the blockchain is the great thing for the end user. I think that one of the things here is the end user doesn't even have to know that the blockchain is happening. All they have to know is that it's going to be faster and cheaper. So somebody today goes to their partner, they go to a cash in, cash out location, or they go to their bank or their MTO, and they say, here's $100. I want to send that to somebody in Thailand. And they say, great, we're going to take 6% of that, and it's going to take 4 days. Well, in the future, after we're done with this, getting this partnership fully up and running, and we do have so as Beam said, a couple of transactions have already been done, it'll say, okay, we're going to take $1 and it'll be there within an hour. That's what they need to know. They don't need to know whether it's on the Stellar blockchain, whether it's not, whether it's on blockchain, whether it's traditional. They just know that it got there faster, cheaper, and it's just as, if not more, secure. So that's what we're looking for. And they do think, as to your question directly, that because Stellar is instantaneous and you cut out all those middlemen, that's why it's so much faster.
Great, Mike. That's really good. And then another question for you, just in terms of where we are in the whole roadmap. I know that Beam kind of mentioned a little bit about a kind of a pilot. I know there was some fairly aggressive kind of timelines around kind of rolling this out. How are we doing in terms of kind of your aspirations for kind of going live and the volume that you're looking to transact?
It's great. We are on track currently. I think we said earlier on in the year when we announced the partnership, we're going to raise the funds, which we did. And then we said by the end of the year, we'll be doing live transactions. We have already, I think in the past week, done our first live transactions, and those were from from South Korea to Thailand. We're going to continue to build upon that. We've got contracts signed, and we're starting implementation with a handful of other companies that are, going to be able to represent other countries in the region that will be able to send money back and forth to. So we're feeling good about the timeline and where we stand on that. I think you're on mute, Ben.
Sorry about that. Great. That's good to hear. I'm going to throw it open to the floor now. We've got a number of questions that have come in. So in the last kind of 5 minutes, I'm just going to throw through questions to yourselves. So first of all, a question about regulations. And Mike, I'll start with you just because we're talking at the moment. Can you comment on how you're addressing kind of the travel rule and navigating any local FAFT-like regulations that would prevent money laundering and things like that nature? No, particularly in this geography, it can be problematic from an AML perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the great things about Stellar overall is that it's like-minded people that are saying, we need to work with the regulators, we need to work with the governments to get this done right. And especially when we're looking to partner with some existing financial institutions to utilize their customer base, the best thing is to understand what the regulation is so that we can utilize that and work within the confines of that regulation so we know that we're getting it right. So we are working with the MAS in Singapore, for example. We're working with regulators in basically all of these regions to understand what the regulations are, what the licensing requirements are, and we're getting those licensing requirements done when they're required. And where different regions have it very different, as you would imagine. In terms of the travel rule, we're working on that. In certain regions, it's being able to go in and out of cryptocurrencies. You don't have to necessarily worry about the market makers in the middle. Sometimes you do have to worry about market makers, in which case you can do whitelisting, which is built into the Stellar network to be able to have a whitelist. And that way you do know from a travel, who is going to be buying and selling all the tokens along the way, because you have the whitelist there. So there are definitely ways to do that built into the Stellar network already, which is fantastic.
Great. Another kind of Stellar specific question before I kind of kick it to Beam. Obviously, kind of Stellar is a public blockchain, which means that there is a full auditable series of transactions that can be tracked and traced. Is that a problem in terms of how payments tend to be confidential in nature, but it's a public blockchain? Is there encryption involved or something of that kind of nature?
Well, so clearly there's encryption from a security perspective. And what we haven't seen a problem with this because most of the transactions are actually going from institution to institution. Right. They will have end consumers, but oftentimes the concerns with privacy is that Mike is sending Ben money and Mike and Ben don't want everyone to know about that. But if Mike is using 7bank and Ben is using KBank, then all that is seen is the transaction publicly that is seen is the transaction from 7bank to KBank. Now, of course, those banks as regulated financial institutions are going to have the transaction from Mike to the bank initiating it and from the bank to Ben. But the part about that everyone's worried about the confidentiality is kind of removed because it's largely going to be institution to institution.
Effectively, it's an omnibus account in terms of from the customer's perspective. That makes a lot of sense. And Beam, a question for you. Did you test any other blockchains before deciding on Stellar? Or, why Stellar? What was the journey that led you to select Stellar?
Oh, I think we share the same vision of open financial network. And also after review on and compared to other technology, right? Stellar is indeed the best value transfer network. And because the network being built in a way that focus on financial transaction, and also because of the flexibility of the network, we can build the credit layer on top. We can build many things on top that is very compatible and suitable for what we want to do in South Asia.
That makes sense. You hit it. You all heard it here first. Stellar is the best blockchain for payments and remittances from Beam himself. So I think that concludes our session for today. So I want to thank Beam and Mike for your time. That's been certainly very insightful and interesting from our perspective. And I wish you both the best of luck. And we're looking forward to hearing how those developments are going to pan out in the next couple of months.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate it. And thank you, SDF, for having us at Meridian.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Thank you, SDF. Thank you.
Right.